Welcome to the Life in Michigan podcast. Life in Michigan is more than an online magazine. We share the stories, experiences, and vibrant personalities that make the Great Lakes state truly unique. In this podcast, we bring you inspiring, heartwarming, and sometimes unexpected conversations with people who call Michigan home. From the rugged beauty of the Upper Peninsula to the bustling creativity of Kalamazoo, we'll cover the stories and define what it means to live, work, and play in Michigan. Today on Life in Michigan, we are talking to Tony DeRosa, the owner of Hear.Say Brewing and Theater in Ann Arbor. Get cozy and join us for this conversation. Excellent. Hey, we're talking to Tony DeRosa from Hear.Say Brewing. Tony, how are you?
I'm doing good. Good to see you, Chuck and Brenda. How are you guys?
We're doing good.
Great.
It's 19 degrees, but we're inside, so it's fine.
Yeah, I went to, nobody has salt and our parking lot is completely frozen. So I had to do some research today on whether you can use like water softener salt. I was like, in my head, I'm like, salt is salt. I wouldn't use table salt, but I was like, okay, I think we can use, like water softener, well system, kind of salt. But it was kind of one of those, I guess so.
Oh.
We're going to find out. I've got 120 pounds of it in my car, so I really hope I can. Or I'll be going back to Walmart. But I was like, yeah, we'll see. So this is the year I opened a business and was like, last winter was so mild. I was like, I probably don't need to like overly worry about this because of global warming and such. And I was like, well, I'll just, make do with our little snowblower. And boy, was that the wrong decision. So
I know. It's like this year we finally get winter again. And it's like sort of like with a vengeance almost, it's like just
yeah. Yeah, the extended period. But what I've learned, you can do a drive down to Toledo and it's 1 degree warmer sometimes. So that 1 hour it can be 1 or 2 degrees warmer. So if you really need an escape, but that would be life in Ohio. So I'll leave that aside.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I think Tony, when we had talked at some point, I believe you mentioned that you've migrated to Michigan. You were born somewhere else. Is that correct, or am I confused?
Yeah. I kind of moved west over time, but I grew up in New Jersey primarily. So like Philadelphia suburbs is where I like really spent my childhood. And yeah, went to public school around there, like 30 minutes from Philadelphia. Some people know the town Cherry Hill, which is the most notable town in our area, but I grew up in a town called Marlton. And then I went to college at the University of Richmond, and part of my rationale was I loved it there. It was a great experience, but one of my reasons for going there was quite embarrassing, which was that they were one of the only schools to send me a CD-ROM, and in that era, I was like, oh man, I popped it into my desktop computer, and I was like, this campus looks so beautiful. Wow, this is amazing. Like the technology they're working with to have a CD-ROM that they can just afford to send every prospective high school student. So I went to the University of Richmond and studied leadership, political science, and Spanish, which is kind of a weird triple major I cobbled together, and then went to Connecticut and did Teach for America. So I was in Stamford, Connecticut. Met my wife Lauren out there, and then we knew she was always pretty intent on going to medical school and being a physician. And she was from Michigan, so that was kind of how I sort of eventually moved out here. So I moved to Ypsilanti with no job, applied for a lot of bad jobs that I'm glad didn't work out because I had no idea who would value like a few years of teaching experience in a post-college program. And then I got a job at Google. I was getting like no's from one of my jokes is like, these apartment complexes don't want to hire me, but for some reason Google does. So what's going on here? And so I did get that job and was there for 8 years. We eventually moved to Ann Arbor, and then 2020, kind of early pandemic time, Lauren had the opportunity to do a 3-year fellowship in Stanford, California. So we went out there. She practices adolescent medicine, so works primarily with teenagers and kind of young adults in their early 20s. And so, yeah, we spent 3 years there, and then they were going through a leadership change, didn't have a full-time position. We moved back to Michigan, and it was kind of one of those moments of, okay, I've spent a decade of my life working for a multinational conglomerate. It's time to do something really hyper local and community focused. So that was kind of, hopefully that was the right amount of detail, but that was kind of how I moved from the East
Yeah.
Coast all the way to the West Coast and then back to the Midwest.
I love it. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, great. So you said poet school? Did I misunderstand that at the very beginning?
I did not say poet school, but I'm curious about that. I
I
wanted,
must have
I'd like to
totally
know more. See, I'm an
misunderstood.
improv guy, so when you say poet school, I'm now like my brain starts firing of what would a poet school be?
Yeah.
Like this
I
is,
know that was like when I heard that, I'm like,
um,
what would a poet? So I totally
yeah,
misunderstood it. I thought it was the
yeah.
coolest thing.
Yeah, I concentrated on haikus though, so I was able to graduate early in poetry school. No, not I did not go to poet school. Yeah, I'm trying to I taught high school
Okay,
briefly.
maybe
That
that's
was
what
so outside of after college. I taught for 3 years,
maybe
which was
that's what
a
I heard. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yes.
So
So
what got you into beer? Like, how did you end up being brewing?
Yeah, where I forget if we were talking about this, Chuck, but I'm so when we moved to Ypsilanti, it was July, and we all know what happens in July
Oh
in
yeah.
Ypsilanti.
Yeah.
So I would say in that era, I kind of probably my senior when I turned 21 in college, I started to be like, oh, there are kind of better beers than, Busch Light and Milwaukee's Best. There's something called Keystone. No, it was
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
just
it's
I
Keystone. It's got this
discovered
really cool label.
yeah, it's so good. Makes me think of the Rockies and cold weather.
Yeah.
Um, so no, I instead it was that I started drinking some stuff probably like Sam Adams and some like Hefeweizens that were popular at the time, and I liked some of those beers. I remember discovering like Delirium Tremens was like, what is this flavor
Yeah.
bomb of a beer back in the day, in that kind of era. And then we moved to Michigan, and I had known that, compared to the, we lived in Connecticut, and there was really no craft beer scene at that time, I would say. Like, even what was the big one? I think Two Roads was a big one that came in, and there's it wasn't a thing. Like we did wine tasting and stuff, but there
Right.
wasn't a lot of craft beer. So we moved to Michigan, and I think 2 days after we moved in, Lauren found this beer festival in Ypsilanti, and of course it was Summer Beer Fest. And I remember, going through like the Dark Horse tent when they were like kind of at their peak. And I was like, oh my God, they've got 8 different IPAs. I didn't know you were allowed to do that. Like you can have all these different beers, and they were serving stuff through Randall's, and it
Yeah.
was just very it felt like this subculture that was very cool, very, you had to kind of just go there and discover stuff because it wasn't so like untapped driven. There wasn't as much, preset expectations. So I kind of
Yeah.
love that discovery. And I don't even remember how many. I have a lot of my shirts from, we made it a tradition to go to Ipsy Beer Fest as much as possible.
Awesome.
Um, so yeah, that was my first, and so I think, discovering all of these incredible beers was, at Ipsy Beer Fest was like a really important moment. And then Kuhn and Drippa was like an important beer, I think, to me, because that, I remember
It's
trying that beer
fabulous.
and was, yeah,
it
I
is
was like,
good.
God, this is so much better than other stuff I've had. And so, that was one in that era that really resonated with me. So I think it really just started as being a consumer, and then I watched other things evolve in Ann Arbor. So I've always been a supporter of Holmes Brewery, and they did such a great job when they opened in 2016 of bringing something new to the
Hmm.
city here, and really good people. So kind of watch that. And I'm always that person, like if a new brewery were to open, I was one of the few members of Pileated, which became
Oh yeah, they were great.
Mothfire.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pileated was cool. So I'm that person, like it sometimes surprises me with our brewery where people are like, oh, I didn't even know you guys exist. And I have to remember that not everybody is wired where they will like literally be one of the first 5 people into your door. So it's been
Yeah.
helpful as a reset.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of like a bit of my journey there. And then I'm a small stake investor in Someday Brewing. I'm the only other investor in that. But my good friends Anthony and Janelle were opening that project while we were in California. And I had, kind of I had a little bit of funds I was looking to invest in. So that was fun to kind of get involved and follow that process along, which similar to mine, it took longer than expected. There's considerably longer than expected to open
Hmm.
because we first discussed that project in 2020, but I kind of got to see a little bit of the ins and outs through being like a secondary, partner on that, and then could use some of that information to my advantage in opening in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
Nice. And someday is over in Grosse Point. Is that right?
Grosse Point Woods.
Grosse
Yeah.
Point Woods. Yeah.
Yeah, right on Mac. So
Yeah.
and Anthony's doing a great job. Yeah. So I think like that was the idea too. Like he and I both share an affinity for like more West Coast style beer, I would say. He's really hitting a lot of home runs with hazy beer. We're about to do our first hazy at Hear.Say. And that's something we get asked about a lot. We just did our first sour, so we kind of checked that one off, and now we're gonna do our first hazy. But yeah, Anthony and I, truth be told, like really love West Coast beer a lot. So when I was in California, that was pretty formative for me as well. Was the Bay Area has some really incredible, especially the Oakland area has some incredible
Yeah.
West Coast IPA breweries. So a good friend of mine runs a blog account called Nobody Likes West Coast IPA, and the whole premise there is like there was a whole campaign around like one of the breweries kind of proclaimed that West Coast IPA is dead, and so it plays very ironically with like nobody likes this will never sell, is kind of the language used to promote those styles. So that he's kind of in the general like East Bay area. But yeah, just discovering that and then going down to San Diego was incredible, and that's part of what really inspired me. And then finding a couple other areas in the U.S. that I consider like real hubs for West Coast IPA are Denver, and Austin. So I'm actually going to Austin for that. The Nobody Likes West Coast IPAs dude's 41st birthday.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, we're gonna hit some of our favorite spots. Meanwhile Brewing's been a favorite
Yeah,
of mine down
Meanwhile's
there.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, Pint House is awesome, and then we always hit ABGB for good vibes and awesome stuff there. So yeah, that's a great I think those are bigger cities than Ann Arbor, but I kind of looked at the market, and I do still think there's a lot of room for kind of exploring that West Coast style, and even seeing that people are meddling for beers in a very competitive category, but seeing some people outside of the West Coast competing is kind of inspirational. And I think as we continue to evolve, that's something we would love to someday do
Nice.
at Hear.Say, is be competitive or thought of in that category of people that make really great, clean, hoppy beer.
Awesome. Awesome.
So did you go to beer school? Like,
I
did you go?
didn't know. I've learned a lot. So I hired Ben Schnurl as our head brewer currently, and he was at One Drop Brewing before that. So he that business closed with a split with his ex, and so he was kind of available. He's come in, and I've learned a lot from him for sure. Um, and I've learned a lot from Anthony, and just have always been a fan of beer. And I've tried to learn enough to at least understand the process and what we're doing, and have opinions on ingredients or hops we may want to feature and how things will work together. But yeah, so I've kind of learned from the people around me, I would say.
Awesome.
I kind of want to keep evolving that, maybe at some point doing some, project that I would do, as part of our program. But, I'm very much more in the owner role, and I do try not to step on toes too much and make sure people are bringing their creativity to the table.
Yeah, well, you guys are doing a great job with the beers because they're
Thanks.
fantastic. I mean, that peach sour was awesome. The
Thank you,
pale,
Chuck.
the Kolsch. I mean, really, super awesome beers. So,
Thank you. Yeah, I talk to a lot of people that are like, I won't visit a brewery, and we're about to hit 6 months, and people are like, I won't visit a brewery in the first 6 months because I want you to get the
yeah.
kinks out. And I would say, we're at a really interesting scale. So we're a 7 barrel brewery, and we are doing, we're not really doing any like half batches of beer. So we're producing a decent amount, but there's sometimes I wonder, there's like the pros and cons of kind of being like a very nifty, almost like it's like sometimes I think like, and we're not big in the grand scheme of things, but there's kind of that, if you're a 1 or 2 barrel brewery, you kind of churn through stuff really quick. Everything's super,
Yep.
you're kind of nimble
Yeah.
in that way. It's not a huge deal to dump something. We've been really happy with our stuff, and Ben's really solid with, eliminating off flavors, and kind of he's very detail oriented on the cleanliness side. So we've been really happy. But there's still some stuff in our very early days that we still want to bring to people, because we've put out 10 unique beers, and we're about to bring we've got 4 more coming like very, very soon. So
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah. But thank you. I
So
appreciate that.
yeah, so Hearsay is a little bit more than just a brewery. You guys got a really cool feature, which is the theater. So like, how did that all come about? What was the spark behind that idea?
Yeah, so so I got really into improv comedy, and these are like really my two, I'm glad that they're two passions that kind of can work well together. Because if it was like, I don't know, knitting and ice skating, that'd be really hard to make a business out of. But I guess it would be. That's
Yeah, you
actually
could
not
do
that
it.
wild because it
Yeah,
could be like
knit.
beanies and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so there was a business in Ann Arbor previously called Pointless, and I was originally in doing this project, working with it was like a couple that owned that business. I was originally working with the guy who had started that business. That partnership didn't work out, but that model kind of proved itself to be very interesting. Just that idea of having, um, the built-in entertainment
Hmm.
and the opportunity to sort of have a reason to have butts and seats, right? I think
Yeah.
so many breweries right now are looking at, not I see people like really having to adapt right now, and some of my good friends in the industry are discovering that. It's like, well, we're brewing the beer, we're doing all this stuff, we're making the space, and now we also have to be like event planners for our own stuff. And there seems
Right.
to be this, we were both at the Brewers Guild conference, and there's a lot of discussion about that, where I think you hear some people, whether it's talking about clubs and how you handle memberships or how you structure events. There's people eager for events. So what's unique for us is we've got this like baked in entertainment side of our business that I think is complementary to the brewery, right?
Hmm.
If we sell 50 tickets for a show on Friday, I know those people are kind of coming through the door, right? Unless,
Yeah.
weather is so bad. But typically we have some predictability around, especially those peak times, having people out for shows. It's great additional revenue for the business. The comedy, we teach comedy as well, so we both do put on performances, and we teach comedy, and those, as you could imagine, have better profit margin than anything on the food or beverage side, because you're
Yeah. It's
you you
just
know
your time.
you're your time, and you're paying teachers. But yeah, there's kind of a fun, I guess, symbiosis with that. And you can think about, there's some things about, I think craft beers always had this like art versus science
Hmm.
aspect. I think there's some brewers that lean more into the hardcore science side. There's some brewers that I think see themselves as like almost mad scientist approach to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of true on the comedy side. Like you can study, you can make comedy very formulaic. Like you've got an absurd character over here, so you need a very straight edge, voice of reason character over here, and that's how you make comedy. And then there's some people that are more go with the flow and see how things feel, and so I think there's a fun marriage between the two, and we're finding that they work well. We're even bringing our one of our show concepts on Friday. We're now bringing other breweries. So that was like something I shared at the conference, is kind of a, hey, here's something unique about us. And I think beer has been so collaborative, people doing, and I'm finding that across the board, the more we do partnership events, just the more exposure we get, right? It just, everything seems to amplify when you have multiple people working together, kind of rowing in the same direction. So we're bringing our Friday night improv show to Batch Brewing this Saturday, which is
Oh,
super fun.
nice.
And
Yeah.
Dave from there has been an awesome partner. They've already sold almost 30 tickets. So that
Wow.
just, to me, that's such a win-win, because it exposes our comedy side to people that may not have seen it or heard of it. Obviously, they're going to see that it's Hearsay. They may get curious, and another day come visit us in Ann Arbor. It's great for Batch at a time. They just celebrated 10 years, and I know they're eager to bring new concepts and events and try things out. So it's, to me, that's such a win-win, that you've got, and it's another opportunity for my performers to get a paid gig as well, because some people put a lot of time and energy into what they're doing. And at our place, I can only have one show a night, or one show at a particular time block. So to bring another show,
Yeah. Oh, right.
and I just had another brewery reach out today. So this would be our third partnership already since like a month and a half ago. So
Wow, that's awesome.
Wow.
yeah, so it's very cool. It's kind of interesting to see who, who's interested and how it can all work together. But I think it could be a really fun way to, I think there's a future state where we even get ahead of it enough to brew a beer together, right? And then maybe there's like a release in tandem with a comedy show, and it's kind of like everybody has the
Yeah.
first sip of the new product at the same time. I think that'd be super fun,
Yeah.
very quirky, and that's kind of, we're a pretty quirky business, so I think we can bring that to other
Yeah.
people.
So you said this is the third. So you've got Batch. Can you say the other two people that
The one was it was one that just came in today as like an inbound request. But we also did actually the other one we did actually was not a brewery. It was a music lounge in Ann
Oh,
Arbor.
Oh
So
oh,
yeah.
called
yeah,
North
yeah,
Star
yeah.
Lounge.
North
Yep.
Star
North
Lounge.
Yeah,
Star.
yeah. So
That
we did
place is so cool.
yeah, it's super fun. It's a very intimate space. So for us doing comedy, it was like
Yeah. It's
we were
small.
yeah, there's like a piano on one side of the stage, but it was a super different dynamic, really fun crowd, and I think that's, they were also awesome people. They were very generous with our team that performed there. So yeah, that's one I think we'll keep going with. But yeah, the other one I don't want to say yet just because we haven't booked it. I literally
Sure.
just saw this email come through actually an hour and a half ago, and I was like, oh,
That's
that's
awesome.
exciting.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's happening is people see Batch has a really large email distribution list, so people are seeing that, other breweries are seeing that, and they're like, this is to me is how it all builds, and it's another fun way. It's like I'm like, okay, I think I've solved for like entertainment. Now I can kind of offer this as a service to other places, and just the spirit of beer. It's like everybody's having some version of their post of like, hey, we really need people now more than ever to come out and hang out with us. And so this is gives them another reason to check it out.
Yeah. Well, we were actually at Casey's Tavern. Have you been
Mhm.
there? Casey's Tavern
Yes.
over? Yeah, like it's kind of where we go on Thursday night, and that the whole
Mhm.
crowd knows us. And we were telling them about Hearsay and the improv, and they're like, and our waiter Jeff was like, "Would this be a good date night?" And we're like, "It would be perfect date
Yeah.
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 It's a
Because we
good
had
date night, a good engagement.
night."
anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we went there on Valentine's and actually did both shows, the 11 non-blondes and then the newlywed games. And
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I laughed so much and it was so awesome. That was so fun. The people that you have, the improv artists, they are really like cream of the crop.
Oh,
Amazing.
thanks.
Yeah, amazing
Yeah, I take
folks.
a lot of pride in that. And that's always one of the tricky things is you get for a lot of people, every show we put on, it could be their first time ever seeing this kind of performance. So, there's pressure to, you want to put on a really good show. We've had a couple nights where I was like, kind of, it just missed. And you want, yeah, you want stuff to really hit at a high level. It's tricky because you're making it up, right? So I think invariably you're going to have some that feel like there's going to
Yeah.
be some peak. What we try to do over time is like raise the floor. And I think that's what I've observed in my own, because I do perform a decent amount myself. And I think over time, it's like you're raising the floor level to where you're gonna
Yeah.
always hit at least a B minus level. When you're starting off, you can definitely have some D. I don't know if there's a D plus, but you can get some D pluses.
Right.
Um, and yeah, but I really appreciate you saying that because we care a lot about developing people. I did like a town hall with all the performers in the fall, and just kind of shared some of the vision of what we're trying to do and created a lane for people to pitch show concepts
Oh, cool.
and get them greenlit for to put on. And two of our regular performers, Kareen and Amy, reached out and were like, hey, we've got this idea for a newlywed game. We think it'd be really good for February. And I think they pitched it in like December or early January. So I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome, right? And it's unlike anything we've done. Because that was a very, that structure was very like character driven, which is kind of
Yes.
there's a lot of shows out west in like LA that are very, you think about people that go to LA, you kind of have to develop if you're trying to break into the industry 2 to 3 to 4 like really really solid characters.
Yeah.
And in Detroit it tends to be a little bit more improv inspired by relationship and sort of like what's the heart of the scene that you're
Mhm.
doing. So to see something put up in Southeast Michigan that was so character driven, I think was really fun. um I love the way they did the interspersing of commercials from the
Oh
era. It
yeah.
was just
Yeah, it was
It was
perfect.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were some
Uh,
really funny lines in there too. My gosh. Yeah, just some like spit out your drink
oh
moments of
yeah.
Yeah.
What
comedy.
was it? Taco something.
Yeah, Velvet Taco.
Yeah.
It was
It
that
was
was
like,
just
how would you describe
perfect.
your partner's downstairs area?
It was
Velvet Taco.
Yeah, that was just perfect. I love that. That
Yeah.
was yeah, yeah. But there were like almost spit out your beer moments because it was like, oh man, this is
Yeah.
so good. Yeah, and like you said, it was nice to get both because you got the full on improv experience during the 11 non-blondes, and then you got the like you said character driven, which was fun. I thought both avenues were entertaining.
Yeah, exactly. And so the Friday 11 non-blonde show, that's really meant to be like a really good gateway show for people. I mean, it's great for everybody, but especially if somebody's like, "Hey, I've never seen improv before, like what should I go see?" I usually steer them towards the Friday,
Mm-hmm.
Friday night improv non-blondes just because it's a show that's really accessible. There's a lot of stuff that's like 3 to 4 minutes. Then as you saw, you get into some longer things
Yep.
that are more in the 8 to 12 minute range, and then they finish with a 20 minute what we call longer form, meaning like uninterrupted scenes, almost like putting together a mini play that may not be we're not trying to necessarily tell like a single story, but just kind of a
Mm-hmm.
long run of sort of scenes or standing up sketches on the fly is how I'd explain that. But yeah, those kind of quick games, a lot of them have a strong structure conceit that sort of inherently makes them tend to work.
Yeah.
And so yeah, the idea of that show is to bring something that had something in it for everybody, right? We do some audience guessing games, we do some character stuff, we do some, kind of really fast-paced scenes, and then some stuff that's a little bit slower, kind of all in one performance. So for somebody new, it's I think a pretty dynamic show that kind of gives you a flavor of what improv is, or if you've seen a lot, you might just be surprised by, it's a group that rehearses weekly. And has performed a lot over the last years together. So I think they've got good chemistry and
That
rapport, which is
that's
good.
awesome.
So how did you get your teams, your comedy teams? Did you recruit them? Did they come to you? Are they already
Mm.
established out there as actors doing their thing? Like, are they just people that love to do stand up and so they do this on Friday night? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, there a lot of our stuff. So there's two kinds of events that we generally do on the weekend. One is kind of partnership style, and that's where somebody's pitching a concept. So we have something on February 21st. Friday night is a there's a show that's very like driven by one person recruiting people to it's like 16 stand-ups. They each go for 90 seconds, half get eliminated each round, so you get down to like one winner, right? And so that's a partnership event, I would call that, where somebody is coordinating that, and that would be stand-up comedy. We do a mix of stand-up comedy and improv comedy. The key difference being stand-up is usually one person with a mic talking to the
Yeah.
whole crowd. Improv is team-based, usually two or more people. It could be one, effectively standing up scenes on the fly with no script. So at its best, it looks like sketch comedy, from SNL or anything else, but the scenes are not pre-written. So for most of our improv shows, we do an open casting. Typically, we did do an initial team when we were getting ready to launch that were sort of um, some people that I felt would work well together, just to kind of get some people in the mix and performing and getting a consistent Saturday night show going. So that's a team called No Outlets, and they're always like the headliner for Saturday night 7:30 improv. So that group we put together, the 11 non-blondes, we cast them. So we put an open casting call, and now that we have students kind of progressing through our improv curriculum, there's opportunities for them to get in the mix and get cast on things. But there was kind
Cool.
of there's a population sort of floating. There's also two really great places in Metro Detroit. Planet Ant and Go Comedy are also really great improv hubs. So between the three of us, as well as in Ann Arbor Civic Improv puts on shows as well. They don't typically do a lot of training. They've had some workshops, but three or four venues, and then there was another one in Ipsy that was kind of called What About Theater that just closed. But they really were doing a great job during like the coming out of the pandemic days of putting on kind of more independent feeling pop-up shows and casting groups. So The short story is between all of those, there were there's kind of a population. It's kind of like anything else. If you're, looking for musicians, there's groups where
Yeah.
you kind of, you can get a hold of the right people to come out for stuff. So that was sort of what we did.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
staying on the collaboration theme, have
Yeah.
you collaborated with any nonprofits? And if so,
Yes.
how did you pick them?
Yeah, so it really helps when people come to us with, "Hey, I've got this nonprofit I care about. What can we do here?" I've found like one of my biggest business challenges right now has been, just to share very openly, like our I'll come back to answering the nonprofit question, but like one of the things I realized was, okay, we've got some days like if we don't have, so there's a positive and there's a dark side of having being like very entertainment driven, and the dark side is if we're just open on a Tuesday and there's no event, people really are looking to come. I think you kind of for each venue you go to, you're like, what's the
What's
occasion where
going
I
on?
go here?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think for us, people really look for us of like, okay, what's going on at Hearsay, right? We kind of made that bed for ourselves by saying, hey, we're a place where there's always something to do, but then we haven't always been consistent. Like on a Tuesday, there's some big activity. Um, so like Wednesday we do trivia, Thursday we now have karaoke, but we had some holes in our calendar. So Tuesday we're really looking at as a great partnership night to your question, Brenda, work with nonprofits. And a lot of it has come from our extended network. So my we're looking at some stuff in my wife's network as well. We may do some things there. She works with teenagers,
Hmm.
especially with non-binary and trans teens. We may do some stuff there
Sure.
and bring in some that group's going through a very difficult time
Yeah.
with a lot that's happening nationally. But the we worked with the Southeast, the Women's Center of Southeast Michigan, and that's one of our performers, Marley, is actually an employee there, and our bar manager's partner's mom works there. So we had like
Oh,
two
yeah.
connections to that group, and they were really eager to do this. We did two bingo events. The first one was traditional bingo, and then we got a subscription to music bingo,
Oh, cool.
and so we're now running music bingo 2 times a month. And the idea of that is on these Tuesdays when we do a partnership, we will bring in the organization to partner with us. And we make like, we put, you can't charge people to play bingo. So it's important you don't do that
Yep.
legally.
Yeah.
So we're not charging. There's no admission fee. I know there was a thing way back where there was some back and forth about bingo rules and all that.
Yep.
But it's completely free to play. Optionally, people can scan a code and Venmo to the charity, and then we're donating 10% of our revenue for the evening to the nonprofit as well. And it's honestly it's one of those things I think has been like good for everybody, right? It's
Hmm.
mutually beneficial. Like we do enough business that more than the difference in a day where we don't have anything going on, so we have a partnership music bingo night has been vast.
Nice.
So it's kind of it's been good for us to see. I think we're trying to, as a new brewery, we're trying to kind of force growth a little bit through events and partnerships. And so non-profit type events are great for us. And I'm kind of looking at Tuesdays as being maybe, because I think there's almost we could eventually be at a point where we almost do something every Tuesday with a different charity. Like I think that could totally be in range. And and I've just found like even with whether it's the batch event or whether it's other, when we worked with the Women's Center, or we're about to work with Lost Voices. We had to move the one for next week, but we're doing a bingo night next Thursday with them, a music bingo on a
Oh, fun.
special night. So and they do like they help people with trauma, do songwriting. So very cool nonprofit. And that one was because one of our Mug Club members works there and kind of, you know, talked to her and left her business card and was like, yeah, this is that feels even better to me when somebody's already doing something with us, whether it's performing or they're a member,
Yeah.
they're a staff member. That becomes really easy to say yes to because you've already got that connection.
Yep.
But yeah, I think there's even more I would like to do. We love pets and animals. I think there's some stuff we could do with the Humane Society
Oh,
in
for
the
sure.
future, some pet
Yeah.
adoption or just even
Yeah.
raising funds. So that would be really fun. The other really goofy idea I've had is so we have to do a lot of education about our parking because as members
Yeah.
and patrons, our parking stinks, and that was
Yeah.
always one of the big grievances with the two previous breweries that were there. I think there were many reasons neither of those businesses succeeded, but I think parking outside of human
It didn't
error,
help.
it didn't help. Yeah. Um, so our overflow parking, we've got a couple options, but I've been thinking about doing like a 0.1K race, because that's how long the walk is. So I was like, maybe we can do like a fundraiser and make
Oh
t-shirts that are
man.
like 0.1K finisher,
Yes.
medal, have like a
Yeah.
lemonade stand at the point zero, 0.005 mark. Um,
Oh
it would
man.
literally be going across, Key Bank and up
Yeah.
there is a hill. I should warn people. It is a
It's
hilly
uphill.
route, but it's only point one miles. But
Oh, you've got to do that. That sounds so fun.
I do want to be silly. Yeah, I think sometimes Ann Arbor, like I love Ann Arbor. I'm glad to be here. I think though that sometimes Ann Arbor gets a little bit like, I don't know. It's like I don't want to say stuffy, but like whatever's one step below stuffy, of kind of like, whoa, we don't know,
Yeah.
I think this
Yeah.
town should be weirder in some ways, and like I'd love to have our business be part of like finding that, like
Yeah.
how can we make
Yeah.
this place a little bit quirkier?
Bring
Um
back the weird.
Yeah.
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 I haven't found a good
Funk.
acronym yet. Um
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So, but once I figure it out, I think there's something there. So, yeah, we've had a few strange ideas, and it's like, yeah, we probably should be more open to that because, I mean, to some degree, it's just I think it would be great, to see the town, I think, embrace new traditions, new concepts, new community hubs where there's something unique or different. But yeah, that's at least part of the thinking there.
Well,
Is this year.
I think Ann Arbor should be a little bit scrappier. Like
Yeah.
we belong to the Jackson Chamber, because
Mm-hmm.
of the gig, the event that we're organizing over in Jackson. And I mean, they think outside of the box all the time. When we
Yeah.
just came off of a meeting with them, and it's a scrappy group. I mean, they've
Mm-hmm.
got ideas coming, and I think it's one of the things that I like. We get out of those meetings and we're like, why can't we have this in Ann Arbor?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
we were in Kalamazoo for their craft beverage week, and we did the Bell's Snow Jog. So kind of
Mm.
it's a little longer, but it's a pub crawl.
Yeah.
But they made it super fun, and the all these businesses were involved. So when we were talking about collaborations, I mean, it really sparked that idea. Well, that we've been talking about collaborations for a while, but that that the communities being part of things, and it's more than just brewery to brewery. It's brewery to business. It's brewery to
Totally.
and that's super cool. And so that's what we would like to hear like that you guys are doing as far as like oh, we're working with nonprofits. You had the Creative Washtenaw out there. We went to an event
Yeah.
Hear.Say for that. The Washtenaw Business Association met out there. So I think
For
that's
after hours,
yeah,
yeah,
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we definitely want to be a place that is top of mind for that. I think there's more we can even do. We've done some like improv for networking type events or improv. We're working on a concept that's like improv for sales, improv for teachers, kind of whatever your profession is. And that
Awesome.
can be another way to get people kind of through and checking stuff out. But yeah, any kind of professional networking groups we love to host. It's really positive and brings in kind of gets more people to kind of come through, check us out, try our stuff. And then yeah, there's some, I don't know there's no like real name. I mean, we're kind of in like the Dickin neighborhood, but there's kind of this like triangle that's Stadium, Liberty, and Maple there, and I'm like, I feel like this could be branded in some way, or we could do some
Yeah.
more there, like the
Yeah.
the triangle. But we're also planning like a live music series starting in May. So my birthday is May 1st, and that first Friday in May, we're planning like a yacht rock concert that hasn't been announced yet.
Oh man,
And
that's
so
awesome.
I'm thinking like Harbor on the Hill is probably what that will be called, but just kind of making that area, and I'm hoping that a lot of we were like we didn't open till September last year, which was we're glad to open, and we actually September and October were both very warm months. Um, but we kind of we are still getting the word out to those neighbors that can like literally walk to us. I think that like hopefully early April to October period again will be so key for us to build that habit. Anybody that can walk to us, you're like,
Yeah.
our best friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
got bike racks, we've got all that, so we can be a little bit of a neighborhood bar. And then yeah, we've there's some great businesses around that we're partnering with. So Polaris Tamales, we carry her tamale. Her name is Sylvia. She's like the kindest lady I've ever met. She's like a hug in a person. And then there's a new manager at Hello Foz, and they've been really working hard to grow their business. So we carry the tamales. We allow people to we can order Foz, and we get a good deal that we can pass along to people. We've really relaxed. There was some tension with the previous owner about outside food, and we do have our own food truck, and we've slowed hours a bit in the winter just because it's tricky to run a truck every day in like
Yeah.
the this level of temperature. But we've gotten some good feedback on just allowing people to grab chelas or grab other stuff nearby and bring it in. And really, we just want the tap room to be full and people to come and have a good time. And so we're, and then I think, yeah, there's plenty of room. Loom Cannabis has been an awesome sponsor of our Friday show for January. So we appreciated them doing that. And, their manager, Ryan, is a super cool dude. And like, there is a lot of good overlap, I think, of cannabis and music and hoppy beer. It's kind of a
Sure.
nice
Yeah.
combinations. We've even talked a little bit about Hash Bash, and maybe we brew something super dank and
Yeah.
kind of
There
have
you
a
Yeah.
presence
go.
from them. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's there's no shortage of ideas.
That's good.
And then on the polar opposite side of Hash Bash, I'm like, Blue Lions down the street, and there's always like people like furiously running out the back of a gym. Which I always like, I love those workouts where people are like
Yeah.
charging out of a building, because if it's not a fitness center, it looks like something wrong has happened. But when it's a fitness center, it's totally normal to just be like
Right.
charging out of a building and down the street. Um, but yeah, I'm like, yeah, that could be another good one. And we've worked with Ann Arbor T-shirt company that's our neighbor. So yeah, all these partners. I think the short story is what you described in Kalamazoo. I think is such a ripe opportunity. I think one of the things I noticed about Ann Arbor that is kind of surprising is it seems like the beer scene is a little bit more heads down, kind of in your own world. And I'm still feeling out where all that comes from, because I think there's room to grow the pie, meaning like more people
Oh
doing beer
yeah.
tourism to Ann Arbor versus like I've got to claim my slice of this pie. I don't think we'll ever be like Beer City, USA. We're not going to be Grand Rapids. That's not realistic. But I've been talking to some people about starting some sort of a tourism angle. Destination Ann Arbor is kind of focused on other priorities at the moment. I know there was an era where they were doing something along those lines of promoting the breweries, but I think there's room for the places like Mothfire and Holmes and us and Jolly Pumpkin and Grizzly Peak and Blue Tractor. There's kind of the downtown hubs,
Harper's
and
out
there's
there
and
now.
Arbor's now our session rooms now Arbor. So yeah, Arbor, Holmes, us,
Grizzly.
Mothfire, we're kind of that kind of that outside wing, and then you've got the stuff that's more downtown. But I think I do think there could be room for doing more crawl type stuff. We joined Florian East is doing Mild Madness in March, and so we signed up for that, and I saw Holmes did as well. So I think that's great, where you have people coming to try a beer style that I
Yeah.
didn't realize. I think that'll be great to see the fact that people traveling for a mild, right, will be such a cool moment in craft beer. I was like, when has this ever happened? But I think it's a cool sign of the times of people looking for like lower ABV sessionable offering. So yeah, that's kind of those have been two of the thoughts I've had kind of looking at the industry is more collaboration, more fun things that get people,
Yeah,
you know.
we were talking to, who was that? Ed Fitz from he owns My Brew Trail, or he doesn't own it. He works at Hearst, and Hearst owns My Brew Trail. They published
Mm-hmm.
that magazine, and we were he's like, I guess he's our editor there. Ed, if he listens to this, he'll be like, "Oh my Lord." Um Anyway, we were just talking to him about collaborations, and he was talking somewhat similarly to what you're saying is, he doesn't know why there's not more like specifically focused in on getting somebody to come to that town to get that beer,
Yeah.
right? So like you can only get that beer there. Like it's a like an Ann Arbor beer, or it's
Mm-hmm.
something that's, it's gonna make, like when you go there, you're like, yeah, I gotta get there to that beer, right? It draws in tourism. Um, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how that would work, but he was kind of jazzed about it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I look at a lot of things and it's like, even, Ann Arbor Restaurant Week just happened in January. As
Yeah.
best I could tell, there wasn't a lot of like nobody's promoting like, hey, we've got beers from, the Ann Arbor breweries and we want to do this pairing. You get a little bit of a wine pairing, of course, with like the higher end spots, but that's to me seems like an opportunity. I do like that idea. I
I,
think I'm super stoked to try like Home's take on a mild and what we just brewed that beer, a couple weeks ago, and I think ours is going to be pretty interesting
Nice.
and delicious. So I think that'll be really fun. It does get into what if anything is distinctive about this area. We are for the first time we just brewed a beer with some Hop Alliance hops that we're excited about. That's like our first
yeah, Brian.
Midwest IPA. Yeah, so
All right.
Hey, Brian.
yeah, so it's a super. We just dropped the trub on that, and it's clearing up, but it's kind of in that it's moving into a really nice kind of kind of I would say kind of amberish color
Oh,
and has a really nice flavor. So that's kind of an interesting one too. Like historically we work a lot with Yakima Chief on our hops, so we want to keep experimenting and trying stuff to kind of, I think there's in this state in particular there's such a appreciation. So not only like hop lines, but all Michigan hops, I should say, because they
Yeah.
carry a lot of stuff outside
Oh yeah.
as well. So it's an all Michigan hopped IPA, which I think will be a really fun expression. We dry hopped with Willow Creek, which was a new hop to both me and our brewer
Yeah.
Ben. So
Huh. Awesome.
so yeah, we'll see how that goes, but it's I think that kind of yeah, there could be something there. I'd be curious to think about like, yeah, what would a distinctive beer
that would,
Yeah.
style be in
Beer
this
style for
region?
Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, there's
yeah,
something to ponder.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's something to ponder. When we again we're at Kalamazoo, there were a number of like they had wine and popcorn pairing. They had
Hmm.
a wine and pizza pairing. They had a beer and pretzels.
Donuts.
It's
Hmm.
obvious, but like they had a beer and jerky, beef jerky. They had
Hmm.
another one was a beer and donuts.
Hmm.
Um, and they like it was fun, and these breweries were packed. I mean, people were you
Yeah.
could buy tickets ahead of time, and like if you didn't have a ticket, you weren't getting the pairing. And
You
it
didn't
was
get it. Yeah.
fun, and people were it was good. I'm like, why doesn't Ann Arbor do this?
Yeah, it's a question I ask a lot, and I don't know. I mean, I could see it if everybody was just knocking out of the park all the time, 100% of the time without any effort, but I don't see that to be true. I think it's just the need for probably some people wrangling everybody together. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll need to be me, but
Yeah.
There you go.
yeah. And, like, at some point it's like, who's gonna do this? Like, all right,
Yeah.
well, I'll just do it. But because yeah, I do think that yeah, there's so much opportunity. And like we get a lot of people on like the Tagger Brew trail
Oh
come
yeah.
through. A lot of the breweries are not on that in Ann Arbor. But it's been a great way to meet people from around the state. And for us being new, I get it. Not everybody's looking for that dynamic. It's definitely like a crawl kind of dynamic. They're coming in usually to try something and keep it going.
Yeah.
But we hosted their holiday party, and it's an awesome group. They do a lot of great charitable things. So I think, I'm down to do more of those types of things. And I think for us doing some of our own sort of trail concepts or yeah, food and beer pairings, like there should be way more of that because we have some awesome food. We've got some great breweries. I would
Yeah.
love to see that happening more in town.
Yeah. So when you were talking about, bringing up ideas and not having a shortage for ideas, you have to manage both a brewery and a theater.
Yeah.
So, what are the challenges with that? Like two different entities under one roof.
Yeah, it's kind of different parts of the brain a lot. It sounds like, oh wow, we have like it's there's some wild ones like, yeah, we're like manufacturing beer over here, and then we're like putting on comedy shows. It's weird to be doing both those things in a single day sometimes. But yeah, so I went through a phase of like really delegating a lot of what was happening at the bar to our bar manager, Michael, who we call hospitality lead. And and that's been it kind of allowed me. So there was a period where I was kind of really leaning into the theater, and my logic for that was I want to get us to a consistent point where we've got, our improv enrollment is really strong, and we were able to, last term we, got to almost 70 students actively taking class with us, which is
Wow.
pretty good and very healthy for the business. I'm trying to see that I'm hoping we're sustaining that now. We're kind of in that enrollment period now for
Nice.
March. Because that'll probably give me the confidence to maybe get more aggressive with like additional space to possibly lease. I'm actually looking at some options there. But yeah, the short story was that we wanted to grow it was grow the improv enrollment and have a consistent show calendar from Thursday to Sunday. And I've kind of gotten a lot of that to the point where I can now have somebody kind of manage that and maintain
Hmm.
it. And I'm going to turn more of my attention over to the bar because I think there's some opportunity areas still for us to capitalize on. It's a lot of the people I'm trying to reach right now are the people that could care less that we have the theater. It's kind of the to be
Yeah.
honest, and I'm totally fine with that too. Like we're
Yeah.
very
They just
much
want
a
to come in
brewery.
and hang out and get a beer, right?
There was a phase where I would get about 5 calls a week from people saying, "Hey, if I come in and drink, like, will there just be comedians like heckling me or bothering me or like what's going on here?" I was like, "Oh man, that would be the worst experience." I'm almost shocked you even think that is like in the range of possible
Right.
options I would have considered for the business. But I'm like, you know what? It's ultimately it says that like I didn't do a good enough job explaining what we are and the fact that there's very much like if you are just a brewery person, we are here for you, and like we very much, it's definitely like a both and, but you can do either or, as far as how things go. So we're trying to come up with some fun ways just to kind of grow more of that base. We're really working hard to grow our Mug Club membership, and we're doing. I think we'd probably be on the high end of like event free. Like we're trying to do at least one event per month and at least one perk or kind of surprise thing that happens per month. And so yeah, that's kind of where I'll kind of turn more of my attention now is like let's make sure we're like really treating our members well. Let's make sure we're building that kind of base audience and we're finding those people. We're finding the people that most like our beer, right? Because there are some unique things about our beer. We use all reverse osmosis water,
Mm.
and that flavor profile is like really clean. I find
Yeah.
like drinking other beer versus I find other beer now that tastes like a little bit more turbid to me, or kind of like more grit or stuff going on. Whereas like
Yeah.
ours is like very clean, and we have a lot of light stuff. But I think there's people that prefer it either way. I probably at this point prefer I prefer kind of the
All right.
clean starting with
Yeah.
the RO water. But it is different flavor profile. We find that when we find those people that like our beer, they like really like our beer, and that was true for Ben at One Drop because it is kind of a unique mouthfeel and flavor profile when you do strip water and rebuild it. The upside, of course, is we're reducing like glyphosates and stuff that are or other things are in that's on the grain side with like the grain we use is all Wireman tested malt. But on the water side, we're stripping things as well, so we're not dealing with like the variability of Ann Arbor
Yeah.
water, which is
Yeah.
a big challenge. But yeah, so we're finding those people that are really passionate about the way we do things, and that's really cool. And then we're pushing ourselves, at times, a little bit beyond our comfort zone or trying something new. Like the sour project was really cool, and it's pretty cutting edge technology because it's actually a yeast strain that produce it's a Chico yeast strain that produces lactic acid without the risk of contamination. So it's a really cool, innovative product.
Yeah.
But the whole reason why a lot of people won't brew sour beer is because you don't want to have, like a lacto infection, and now your
Yeah.
beers
It
are
goes crazy.
you
Yeah.
you want
Now
your
you're hooked.
sour beers to be sour,
Yeah. Not
not
everything
your
else.
not your stout or your
Yeah.
brown ale or anything, unless you're doing something really creative. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'll be a little bit turning my attention to say, okay, how can we make sure the tap room is as fun as the theater? Because a lot of people are just coming to hang out, and I think I think we're on the way there. But there's just, it's like the nonprofit partnerships for Tuesdays and
Hmm.
kind of making that more of a thing. And we're about to revamp our happy hour and put a bigger push into that to try to make that a really enticing offer for people to come and hang out with us after work. So yeah, those are some of the big things we're kind of thinking about right now.
Sounds
Yeah.
great. Sounds
Yeah.
great.
So we're almost done. We're at the almost to the
Yeah.
final
Yeah.
As you
question.
said, that went by really fast.
It does. It does. You're
Yeah.
like, where did it go? Right?
Yeah.
And so like our final question, we're gonna ask. We've only had two episodes, so if you're our second interviewee, so we didn't use this question with the other group, but we should have.
Yeah. I can
Um,
answer for them. Just tell me who they are. I'll answer for all two.
Yeah.
well, so the question is, if you could share a beer with any artist, living or dead, who
Mm,
would it be and why?
wow. That is such a cool question. So any artist, I'd probably go on the comedy side, and somebody, I've been really nerding out on the history of comedy recently, and so that was the SNL 50th anniversary,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Okay.
so there's a lot of energy around that. I'm finding it very interesting to see, like, watch sketches and see what kind of holds and what doesn't hold as well. On the improv side, there's a well-known guy that he's is kind of a legend in the improv side, Del Close from he was like very foundational in a lot of what happened with like the development of Second City and
Oh, cool.
IO Theater in Chicago. So he's somebody I would definitely think about because I think there was a lot of substances getting used there as well, which would probably make it a very interesting
Right.
conversation. But
Yeah.
I think for me, it probably would be some answer about kind of like connecting to the roots, especially on the comedy side. Um, I don't know if if he'd be a beer guy. I know he would do some other things, but beer might be
Yeah. Well, you
a
share a
question mark.
beverage, right? Yeah.
Share
Share
a
a beverage.
beverage,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
You could
Yes.
have the beer and he could have, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Gin
Yeah.
and tonic
So
or whatever the hell.
yeah, and then there's a lot of close runner-ups. I mean, there's some like really incredible people that have gone on to do amazing things. So like your Stephen Colbert's, your
Oh,
Amy
yeah.
Poehler, Tina Fey, your people that were like very important in comedy. So kind of a nod to some of those incredible people as well. Because yeah, I think like we're starting really small, but I've got really crazy ambitions of like where this could all go in terms of, especially with like, there's a lot of interesting things happening with digital and like combining offline and online things. And so, yeah, it's kind of cool to think about like, well, what's happening now or like what's coming next.
Yeah.
So I've done a little bit of like explore the past to kind of foresee
Yeah.
what's coming. I think that's kind of happening on the beer side as well with lager and with low ABV beer and
Yes. Yep.
um
Table
I
beers.
think yeah, I think stuff jumped the shark right now. It's like, okay, what are we coming back to after like, you know,
I
uh gummy bear, gummy worm
Yeah.
sour and not that those are great,
They're great. Yeah.
and,
They got their place. Yep.
but yeah, I think people did those for so long and now they're like, okay, I'm actually enjoying this, this German Pilsner is quite lovely.
Yeah.
And
I,
complex if you chill out for a second and really enjoy it and think about it versus like needing to be attacked. Again, both good. I
Go
both
good.
good,
Yeah.
but
But
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with that sentiment about the recurring of looking back and bringing it forward. I feel like that's happening in so many different ways,
Yeah.
uh, whether it's because I see people like getting really excited about like physical magazines and physical books, and it kind of goes in again with like breweries, like pubs were places where people hung out and would read a
Hmm.
book or do some drawing or talk with their buddies and pals, and so I think that's really fun that you are kind of embracing that and then looking forward to.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's great. Like there's so many like reading clubs and things like and on some level like I just want people to come and have a good time, right? And like I
Yeah.
do think like the tap room's generally full and people are enjoying themselves and having fun. Like I do have a belief and a faith that the numbers kind of work itself out, right? Not everything
Yep.
has to be like a crazy party. There's a lot of reasons why people come to a hub and just to even have it as a meeting place,
Mm-hmm.
I think is great. So yeah, I do think there's a return to that. I think people are paying more attention to ingredients to some degree and sort of what goes into things, and we're like always happy to have that conversation with kind of how we do our process on the products we're selecting that go into our, our beverages, or the reverse osmosis water, and sort of why we do that. But yeah, that's I do think there's a lot to that. People kind of looking backwards to go forwards and kind of figure out where we've come from. And
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, God, having like craft lager. We went Goldfinger, that was at the if you've tried their any of their stuff, but they were at
No.
they spoke on lager at the
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
at the Brewers
Brewers
Guild
Guild Conference.
conference.
Yeah.
And man, their beer is so good. It's like it's crazy, but it's like, yeah, it's, there's three or four things on draft. And I sometimes feel that pull too. I'm like, oh, we've got to have like 15 things on it. But it's like, it's a good reset. And I actually think Ben is somebody that helps hold me accountable for that. It's like, there's a lot of ways to succeed in this industry. And sometimes it's, you got to look at what are we trying to do here?
For sure.
And even for us, making some styles beyond what we were doing, or kind of, okay, does it still feel true to who we are? Are we doing, what's our rationale for this new product, and what are we trying to do with it? But yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Tony, thank you so much for being on Life in Michigan and talking with us. We really appreciate it.
yeah.
Yes, I am
Good.
sorry for the plug of Life in Ohio at the beginning of the episode. That's been bothering me. But that is, it
There's
does
somebody
speak of
living there.
expansion opportunities. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Somebody's there.
That's right.
Somebody's there.
And
Somebody's there.
they may hear this and they go, "Oh man, I want to go to Michigan and hang out with Tony."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so. That would be wonderful. But thank you guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Cheers. It was a joy talking with Tony. He's one of those people that makes you instantly feel comfortable talking with him. What was your favorite part of the interview, babe?
That is a tricky question to answer. Maybe when I asked him about going to poet school. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That was totally on me. I really thought he said he went to poet school, and I thought, how cool.
Oh, yeah. That was awesome.
Well, okay, maybe when Tony was reminiscing about the Michigan Brewers Guild summer beer festivals. What about you? What was your favorite part?
Well, I definitely like the fact that Summer Beer Fest was important to him and his wife and introduced him to the craft brewing scene, because I love the craft beer festivals in general. But I really loved when he was talking about collaborations and the things that Hear.Say is working on, such as like doing stuff with nonprofits or taking the improv theater on the road. That all sounded really exciting. And I love that Tony doesn't seem to have any problem coming up with new ideas.
He's very much an idea person. I'm curious what their staff meetings are like.
Yeah.
When he compared well, let me start that again. When he compared the comedy and brewing industries in the podcast, I was like, now that is creative.
Yeah.
No, he doesn't have a shortage of ideas. An inspirational leader, to be sure.
Yep. I have a feeling I would like to work at Tony's place.
Careful there. Remember the last time you applied for a job slinging beer?
That's right. Hey, there's always another opportunity. It could all work out.
Maybe.
All right. Well, be sure to check out the show notes, as we've got links and a few photos to share about Hear.Say Brewing and Theater in Ann Arbor. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast service to catch every episode of Life in Michigan. Help us spread the word by rating the show, sharing it with your friends, your neighbors, your family, your mail carrier. Share it with everybody, and leave a comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Stay connected by following us on our website and social media. This is a Life in Michigan production. Until next time, take care and have a fantabulous day in Michigan.